So, a new Star Wars movie trailer just dropped. You'd think that would be a reason for celebration, right? But for a really big and very, very vocal part of the fan base, the reaction is, well, it's something else entirely. We're talking frustration, we're talking apathy, even anger. And it seems to go way deeper than just one trailer. So what is actually going on here?
And this right here is the massive gap we need to talk about. On one hand, the studio sees a brand new adventure in a galaxy we all love. But on the other hand, a lot of these critics see something totally different. A soulless, cynical attempt to just cash in on a name. It's a huge disconnect.
All right, so let's start with the trailer that kicked this all off again. What was it about this specific preview for The Mandalorian and Grogu that just seemed to bring years of frustration boiling right to the surface for these fans?
6.5 years. Think about that. That's how long it's been since a Star Wars movie was actually in theaters. Now, normally you'd expect to wait that long to build up some serious hype. But according to the critics we're looking at, it's had the exact opposite effect. It hasn't built excitement, it's just created indifference.
And this quote from the source material really just nails that feeling. The argument here is that the audience hasn't been sitting around eagerly waiting. Nope, they've moved on. They're watching other things. The feeling is that the cultural moment has passed, and now Star Wars is kind of knocking on the door, but nobody's really that excited to answer. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to break down the actual scenes from the trailer that are getting the most heat and really try to understand the logic behind all this criticism. First up, a big moment from the trailer. We see the super popular character Grogu, Baby Yoda, and he's rocking his very own tiny suit of that nearly indestructible Beskar armor. On the surface, hey, it's a cool new look for a character everyone loves. But the reaction from this perspective is wow. It's visceral. This quote shows it's not being seen as a fun character beat. It's seen as a symptom of a much bigger problem, that this character is being overused and force-fed to the audience as this cute, marketable toy. And it's not just Grogu, it's the hero himself, the Mandalorian. The trailer shows him pretty much how he always is, this incredibly skilled, basically invincible fighter who just mows down any enemy without even breaking a sweat. And that portrayal is what leads to this specific accusation, that he's become what's known in fan circles as a Gary Stew. It's a term for a character who is just so perfect, so flawless, that there's no more tension or drama. The criticism is that the Mandalorian doesn't face real challenges anymore. He just wins, and that, they say, makes him boring. Okay, so let's zoom out from the specific characters and look at the bigger picture. The main accusation being thrown around by these critics is that the franchise isn't really creating anything new anymore. It's just strip mining its own past for ideas. This quote just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? The return of the Hutts as the bad guys isn't seen as an interesting new story. To these critics, it's a perfect example of using something familiar, a member berry, just for the sake of recognition. And for anyone who's not familiar, a member berry is this really great concept from pop culture criticism. It's basically the idea of weaponizing nostalgia. Instead of writing a fresh story, you just show the audience something they already know and love, and go, hey, remember this? And the accusation is that this new trailer is absolutely loaded with them. And you can see exactly what these critics are pointing to. It looks like a checklist of nostalgia bait. You've got Huns, you've got snowtroopers on a snow planet, how convenient. You've got Imperial walkers that look exactly like the old ones. The argument is that it's a pattern, that they're just using old stuff as a creative crutch. So where is all this coming from? I mean, this level of frustration doesn't just appear overnight. To understand it, we actually have to go back in time. Because according to this viewpoint, there was one single moment, an original sin that set the stage for every problem we're seeing today. And there it is. It's a clear, powerful statement. For this group of fans, the moment the franchise lost its creative soul was the day Disney officially canceled the expanded universe. All those books, comics, and games. To really get the impact here, you have to look at the history. For decades, the EU was Star Wars. It's where the story continued. But then, in 2014, Disney buys Lucasfilm and just wipes the entire slate clean. All those stories became non-canon legends. The argument is that in doing that, they threw away an entire universe of proven ideas and were left with a total creative vacuum that they've been trying to fill with nostalgia ever since. And this is the central irony that the critics point to. The whole stated reason for canceling the EU was to give filmmakers creative freedom, to break free from the shackles of old stories. But the result, from this point of view, was a creative team that suddenly had nothing to work with.
even though they had just thrown decades of material in the trash.
So after all that criticism, what's the final word? Where does Star Wars even go from here? Well, as you can probably guess, the verdict from this viewpoint is pretty darn bleak.
This critical outlook basically boils down to a few key predictions. First, they think this movie is going to be a financial flop. Second, they believe the well of old ideas has just run completely dry. And third, they argue that the sequel trilogy has already ruined the best remaining story ideas. So the only solution they see? Just stop calling it Star Wars and make something completely new.
And this quote is really the final blunt takeaway. It frames the entire Disney era not just as a creative failure, but as a massive business blunder. They bought this universe overflowing with stories, and the very first thing they did was get rid of most of it.
Which leaves us with this final, much bigger question. And this isn't just about Star Wars, really. It's about any story that's been around for a long, long time. Is nostalgia a warm, comforting blanket, or is it a creative prison? And can a beloved franchise ever truly move forward without being haunted by the ghosts of what it used to be?